Have you ever felt like your wife is emotionally distant or even physically distant? Like no matter how much effort you put into connecting with her, she just keeps moving further and further away from you. It's almost like there's this invisible wall between the two of you and you have no idea how to get through it. Maybe she avoids deep conversations. Maybe she shuts down during conflict, or maybe she just keeps her emotions locked up tight. As men, this can feel extremely frustrating, and it can even be gut-wrenching and heartbreaking. You want to fix it. You want to bridge the gap between the two of you. You want to be connected to her again. But here's the problem. The harder that you push, you notice the more she pulls away. Does any of this sound familiar? But here's the truth that most guys won't tell you. You cannot fix this by working harder. We can't bulldoze our way through an emotional wall when it comes to our wives, but you can lead the relationship in a way that makes her feel safe, a way that makes her feel like she's understood, and she'll open back up again. Today, we're going to dive into why our wives might be avoidant in our relationship. We're going to understand what's going on, why it's happening, and most importantly, what we can do about it as men to fix this. This podcast today is not about pushing harder. It's simply about working smarter and leveraging just the skills that's needed in relationships like this that, quite frankly, we are never taught. So buckle up, tighten your shoelaces. I think you'll really like this one. So what does avoidant behavior even mean? It can be trauma from their childhood. Maybe they had an overbearing father or an abusive father. Maybe it was even their mom. You know, their mom might have been a perfectionist and nothing ever measured up. Like they couldn't do enough good, and there might be trauma there. So the best thing to do was to just simply not be vulnerable if they couldn't be perfect, and just to avoid. If you have an abusive father, you know, you usually want to avoid that situation. If you have a perfectionistic mother, you know, you want to avoid situations like that. Also, during conflicts, the other thing too, the other symptom of this is that our wives are avoidant during conflict. And what does that really mean? Is that they don't like to fight, or they won't fight, or they'll walk away from us, or they'll just stonewall, give us one word answers. But here's one of the most confusing things about this whole thing. We as men, we take that as rejection, like they are actually rejecting us. When in actuality, this is actually something that is self-protection. It really, quite honestly, it might not even have a whole lot to do with us. It might be a lot of what they've experienced either in their own childhood, other relationships, maybe even in the workplace of some sort of trauma that they're dealing with, or some sort of situations where, you know, they felt unsafe. And because of that, when they're triggered in our relationship, they tend to do the exact same things, and they tend to avoid. Now, I'm not saying that this is not our fault in the relationship. It could be from past experiences. However, it could also be from current experiences. So like, for instance, if you're a man and you're asleep at the wheel of your marriage and you don't have any type of emotional connection to your wife, or you're just checked out, you're tired, you're overwhelmed, you're stressed out, or whatever, or she doesn't feel that she can necessarily talk to you because you're going to get pissed off, you're going to get stressed out, you're going to get overwhelmed, she might avoid you altogether. And she might be like, you're just not engaged. I feel like I can't talk to you. Like, these are some of the things that they might say to us. They also might be like, you just don't understand. Like that might be another symptom as well. Or you don't get me. That's another one, right? So they'll just push us away and they'll be avoidant. So here's one thing that we can do differently. We as men, we want to fix everything. And I'll tell you, that's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because I honestly believe the world would not be where it's at today without men who problem solve. Men love to problem solve. We love to fix problems, especially when it comes to our relationships. And in our intimate relationships like we have with our wives, we want to fix it, and we want to fix it quickly, and we want to fix it efficiently. So what do? We actually push harder. We got to work this out. We got to get this done. We got to get this solution taken care of. Or we'll push like more affection, or more. We'll push. And sometimes it actually even comes across in this needy sort of desperate energy, which, by the way, is even more repulsive to our women. So when we're dealing with a woman who might be avoidant in any way, shape, or form, we can pursue them, right? But I am a fan of pursuing a safe environment. Pursue the safety, right? She's attracted to safety. She'll be more open to open up to you if she feels safer. But how do we actually do that? And there's a few ways we can do that. Number one, I know it sounds oversimplified, but be patient. We can only control ourselves. We cannot control her. The best thing we can do is be patient and try to create a non-confrontational environment. Another thing too is that we like to solve problems quickly. And if we're in an argument or we're trying to get past something or we're trying to find a solution to something, a lot of times what we want to do is we want to solve it right then and there. And quite frankly, the other person, our partners, our wives, even our kids or whatever we're talking about our wives, they might not be ready to talk about it right then and there. And the more that we push for that conversation to happen or that solution to happen, the more we're probably going to push her away. We can use statements like, hey, I'm here when you're ready to talk, or hey, just whenever you're ready to talk about this, just know I'm here to listen and to talk more in depth about it. It's giving them space to just go and think about it, right? Or if they need to be avoidant, they can go take that space, but they know that we're here when they're ready, right? We're not chasing them. We're actually attracting them back in by doing that. The other thing too is patience is not just for her, but it's also for us. So like, for instance, one of the worst things we can do is be really, really reactionary when she does have the courage to come and talk to us. Now, I'm not saying put up with any kind of abuse or anything or disrespect or anything like that, or emasculation. That is not what I'm talking about. But if your wife has feedback for you, create an environment of safety where you can take that feedback in. Remember, this is her opinion. You don't have to agree with her feedback, but what's most important is you create a safe environment for that feedback. Quick story to hit this home. I was out the other night, actually, taking my 8-year-old to hockey practice. And we're in this season right now, as you guys heard last week, that it's really, really busy and it's really, really crazy. And people in my house, man, my wife and I, we are tired and we're like at the end of our rope and we're aggravated, we're annoyed easily and that kind of thing. But I'm not kidding when I say that we have something going on every night of every day. It's crazy with the kids' activities we have going on right now. So the other night, came home, I noticed that there were 2 full trash bags in the garage that nobody had taken to outside where the trash cans are. And I got triggered. I got annoyed. And I came in and I'm like, and I looked at my son. I was like, why are the trash bags out in the garage and not in the trash can? And quite frankly, here's the thing. It didn't have really anything to do with the fact that there were trash bags in the garage. It had everything to do with the fact that I was exhausted and we've been going like 90 miles an hour for a long time. And I got triggered when I saw trash bags in the garage because I filter that through the lens of like, my kids are being lazy and they don't want to take these things out in the cold to the trash cans. In actuality, I didn't know that. So I came in and I was like, hey, why are there trash bags out in the garage? My wife was like, Ethan was going to take those out later. He already said he was. I was like, well, why aren't they out now? And I got angry. And what I found out later was that night is my wife was really upset with me that I got angry about it. And she told me, she's like, I was really angry at you. And she's like, you don't even know the story. Let me tell you the story. And I'm like, okay. And she said, the reason the trash bags were out there was because before you got home, like literally 5 minutes before you got home, we took the trash out. And as soon as Ethan was done with the dishes, he was going to put his shoes on and bring the trash out to the trash cans. But instead, without you hearing that, you didn't even ask for an explanation. You just assumed that people were being lazy in the house, and you went out there all huffy puffy and you grabbed the trash bags, put them in the trash can, and you came inside all pissed off. And she's like, and that made me angry. You weren't even listening. You weren't even open to hearing what was going on. And I felt like total crap. I was like, oh my God. Not only did I feel bad, I felt like a fool. I'm like, dude, like that could have been insanely avoidable. And I'll tell you, I felt really bad and I felt like an idiot. I wanted so badly to simply justify what was going on, but I didn't. And I sat there and I listened to my wife and I was like, oh my God. I was like, I am really, really sorry. I was like, that was completely out of line. I didn't know that. And I'm really sorry. And I felt like in a way, like I had kind of damaged the relationship. For some of you guys, that might sound minor. And maybe to some degree it is, but there's been a lot of stress on us lately with everything going on. And I felt like I was just compounding it by acting like that. And I looked at my wife. I was like, man, I like really screwed up. I was like, I don't know how to make up for it. And she just looked at me and smiled. She goes, you're making up for it right now. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't understand what you're talking about. And she said, you're making up for it because you're open to hearing this feedback and you're owning it and you're apologizing for it. Like, quite frankly, Larry, that's enough. And I was like, that's enough? That's really it? She goes, yeah. She goes, the fact that I feel free and open to share this with you is enough. Like, if you were defensive and yelled at me or whatever, like, I wouldn't want to talk to you. And the chances of me coming back and talking to you about something I need to give you feedback on probably would go down significantly. So that was my wife telling me, like, hey, depending on how you react or respond with me is going to probably dictate whether or not I'm avoidant with things in the future. So that was really, really telling. So I know that this is like Friday's fumbles, first downs, and field goals, but man, that was a fumble for me. So think about creating an environment of safety where feedback is welcomed. It doesn't mean it's always agreed upon, but feedback is welcomed. Okay. The second thing is always lead conversations with curiosity and not necessarily criticism. So the example that I just shared with you, I could have gotten really defensive. I could have gotten really critical. I could have been like, well, there's stuff all around everywhere and you do this and you do that and the kid's doing this and the kid's doing that. But I also got really curious because I knew my wife was right. But getting very curious instead of critical creates more of that safe environment. Now, I'm not saying, again, be a welcome mat or be a doormat or be emasculated or disrespected, but people can listen to critical feedback, all day long, as long as the environment is right for that, right? Think about your annual review with your boss. If you have one, right? Chances are you do. In that annual review, your boss is going to tell you all the great things that you do, but he's also going to share opportunities for improvement and things that he might have seen throughout the year that you could have done better. And think about this. If you blasted your boss or you got defensive with your boss or whatever else, that relationship probably is not going to go so well, and neither will our marriages. So creating that environment where it's mostly about curiosity versus criticism will definitely go a long, long way. There's another way we can bring our wives into conversations like this, and we can simply say something like, I've noticed you seem distant lately. Is there something on your mind? That is a question of curiosity versus like, why are you so pissed off right now? Or why have you been so quiet lately? Or why have you been so angry lately? That is going to throw her on the defense. Or we can simply ask questions like, are there any heavy feelings that you're dealing with lately that I might not know about? That's a very curious question. And notice the voice tone that we use too when we bring them into conversations like that. So again, lead with curiosity and not criticism. Another way to deal with a wife that might be avoidant or not sharing things with you is to prioritize consistency over our intensity. When we want to get to the bottom of something, we can come across as very, very intense, right? Like, we got to get to the bottom of this. We got to solve it. We got to solve it now. And that can feel really, really heavy for our wives, and they'll become even more avoidant. Instead, what would it look like to just show small actions of listening without judgment, right? In other words, being very, very curious, validating their emotional state, doing thoughtful things for her, or just, quite frankly, maintaining a steady, calm demeanor. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but my wife and my kids will tell me, I know exactly what's going on just by the look on your face or just by your body language. If my demeanor is off, if my demeanor shows that I'm stressed, overwhelmed, angry, trigger happy, or whatever, our kids, our wives, they're going to be more avoidant. And they're going to say things to themselves like, oh my God, don't piss off dad. Or, oh my God, don't say anything wrong because he might get pissed. Instead, what would it look like if we were calm, if we were calmer, right? And we were able to rationally take things for what they are, just as feedback, right? Or just as the environment is. Another way that we can do this is just simply respect her need for space when she does need it. Avoidant wives might feel overwhelmed by constant closeness, and they just need time to process things. So we can give space without interpreting it as rejection. We can give space without interpreting it as rejection. So like, for instance, we can even say something out loud like, hey, I want to give you space, and I want to give you space to process whatever it is you're going through. Would it be crazy to talk about this tomorrow? Or would it be an outlandish request that we could talk about this in a couple of days or whenever you've processed through it? But basically what you're doing is you're sharing openly that you're going to give her space, but you're also inviting her back in for a conversation later versus a loose end that just never, ever gets tied up. Another way that we can do this is lead with our own vulnerability and authenticity. And I'm not talking about estrogenic sponge type of vulnerability. I'm talking about just stating where we're at. So like, for instance, if I've noticed that she's being distant, I might just call it out for what it is. Hey, I've noticed that we've been, and I say we, not you. I do that on purpose. I noticed that we've been distant lately. And the story that I'm telling myself is we're either really, really busy, or there might be something that is maybe kind of lingering, or something that's simmering in the background and we're not really addressing it. But whatever that is, I just want to let you know I have taken notice to it, and I would like to address it if you're open to it, or if there's anything to address. But that's a way that we can show them like, hey, I see you. I see us. I see these things that are going on, right? And then just inviting them in for a conversation, not pushing it, but inviting them in for a conversation. So as we wrap up here today, just know that the best marriages out there, they require intentionality. They require skills. They require constant navigation and course correction and all these different things, especially if we have a partner who is avoidant. We have to attract them back into the conversation, not push, but attract them back into the conversation. And that is not the easiest thing to do. We have to get out of our own ways as men, because we usually immediately want to solve something. Just barrel right in, solve it. Let's get through it. Let's get over it and move on. And unfortunately, when it comes to our wives being avoidant, or even our kids, the same stuff is true with our kids. Just opening the door for that environment where they feel safe, that they can talk to us, right? And remember, creating a safe environment, that doesn't mean that we're a welcome mat. That doesn't mean that we're emasculated or disrespected. What that means is an opportunity for us to share feedback with each other. And not all feedback is great. But what I can tell you is feedback is a gift. Feedback is a gift. Whether it's good feedback or negative feedback, feedback is a gift. If it's positive feedback, obviously it hits us in the feels. It feels great. If it's negative, know this: the person had the courage to tell you, right? And that's much better than being avoidant. Someone who's avoidant, we're on borrowed time. The more they're avoidant, the more resentment falls into the relationship. The more resentment that falls into the relationship, that is the tumor that turns into a cancer that metastasizes into a full-blown stage 4 cancer diagnosis of the relationship and will eventually kill it. In the Dad Edge Alliance Mastermind, we help men through this very thing. And luckily to say, in the month of February, we are tackling these things. We're talking about communication, sex, intimacy, closeness, safety, the whole 9 yards this month. The cool thing about this is it doesn't matter what month you actually join us, because everything that we've ever done is in our library. So all these things that we teach, doesn't matter if you join us in 2025 or 2030, what we're teaching this month will still be there. So it'll be there for you guys. You can find everything over at thedadedge.com/mastermind. We have the boardroom for all my business owners out there. We've got the alliance for all my career guys out there. Appreciate you guys. Hopefully this particular show really hit home for you, especially if you're dealing with a partner who is avoidant. You can also get all the resources that we talked about today. Just head on over to thedadedge.com/Friday194 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/Friday194 for this show. Gentlemen, go out and live legendary. Take care.